Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a Star Trek book review of the original series novel, Child of Two Worlds, by Greg Cox. I have read now 3 Greg Cox novels. The first one I read was The Antares Maelstrom, which was a superb Star Trek novel. It is in my top 5, probably in my top 3 favorite Star Trek novels as an individual novel ever. It's just an amazing book. It's just superb. And what makes this book really good is just like every element of the execution is just nailed to perfection. The adventure, check. The Western tropes, check. The themes, check. The character balance, check. Everything this book needed to accomplish, it did. And so I was like, oh my goodness, I love this idea. And then I read another book of his. It's the first book in the Legacies trilogy that he did with David Mack and also Kevin Dillmore and Dayton Ward, called Captain to Captain. And I really enjoyed this book. Not quite as much as I enjoyed Antares Maelstrom, but I really enjoyed this book. And this book, it was a fun book to read, and the plot was just impeccable. I mean, the plot in this book is just superb. The character work and the themes aren't necessarily as amazing, I think, as Antares Maelstrom, but I think that the action and the adventure is certainly on par. It's a really exciting book. So I have wanted to read more of his books because he had the potential to be a top author for me, but never really found a book of his in the bookstore I was really excited about until I found Child of Two Worlds, and I was like, it's an original series novel by Greg Cox, and I think it'll be fun. It's nice and short, so let's try it. Well, I just read the book in 2 days, and it was just a phenomenal read. If I had had the determination, I could have read this in 1 day because it was just that good. I think that Greg Cox delivered something here that I was not expecting and really made me excited for the Strange New Worlds series at the same time, even though this has nothing to do with that, actually. So first I'll say this book is a very simple book in its pitch and in its explanation. The Klingons back in the day raided this town of Cyprians, I think it's how you say it, and they captured one of their little girls and took her back and raised her as a Klingon. And they started changing the way she acted, changing the way she looks, and eventually she looks like a Klingon, she acts like a Klingon, in every way she is a Klingon, except that she wasn't born a Klingon and that her actual DNA shows that she's a Cyprian. Anyway, then you have in modern day, the Enterprise has this Regalian flu, and they need to attain some substances to help them with it, and they end up stumbling across this ship in distress, which includes this girl who had been kidnapped and is now Klingon in almost every direction, and then also her older sister who has been trying to rescue her for all 10 years. And it is a big question. The whole book is based on the premise of nature versus nurture. Should they deliver the girl to the Klingons, or should they deliver the girl to the Cyprians, her birth family? On the one hand, the Cyprians, it's her birth family. It is who she is in her DNA. You cannot change intrinsically what she is. She is a Cyprian. So, and also the Klingons, the argument is for the Cyprians is that the Klingons stole her from them, so she is rightfully a Cyprian. The opposite argument is that the Klingons have raised her, that she acts like a Klingon, she walks like a Klingon, she thinks like a Klingon, she's even changed her appearance to appear Klingon. Sending her back to the Cyprians, she's not going to fit in. She's going to be ostracized her whole life. And also, she loves the Klingons. In fact, she has a new adopted father who is a general among the Klingons, and now that adopted father wants to keep her because he loves her. And so now you have these 2 opposing arguments that are actually really strong, and you as a reader don't know which answer is correct. I was leaning in the side of giving her back to the Cyprians, but that was for just some some personal reasons, but I completely understood the moral arguments on both sides, and I thought they both had merit, and the way that Greg Cox delivers them is pure gold, but is a pure question of nature versus nurture, and it was just carried out to perfection. This book is a book. It's billed as an original series book, but it features the characters of Pike, Number One, and Spock. And Pike, I think, gets probably the most page time in this book, but Spock gets the most heart. He gets the heart of the book. He gets the real crux of the action. He gets the real the thematic moments that make the book strike. And also, the book's all based, it's called Child of Two Worlds. It's talking about the girl that's the child of two worlds now, but it's also talking about Spock, who's trying to come to terms with him being half Vulcan, half human, and that he's literally, whereas this girl, she was one and was abducted to the other. No, Spock's in his blood is half and half. He's kind of half human, half Vulcan. So it's just an interesting dilemma that it creates. So it was a perfect title for the book, first of all. Perfect title. Second of all, I think that they actually did a pretty good job with the cover. It looks very 1960s. They got the grainy look on him. And I think the coloration works really well for a Star Trek book. So I think this was a fine cover. Anyone, I think, could come up with the basic premise here, but you have to nail everything in order to be a top-tier Star Trek book. You have to nail every aspect of the book, and every aspect of the book is strong. I'd say the strongest aspect of this book is the thematic elements, whereas the kind of the tone of Antares Maelstrom and like the kind of Western land grab Gold Rush tone to it was what made it strong, and the action of Captain to Captain is what made it strong. The themes of Child of Two Worlds is what makes it so strong. The themes here are just impeccable. And you also have some really great action. I thought the action down on the Cyprian planet with Number One was fantastic. By the way, this book came out before we got Captain's Captain, and she's named Una in this book by Craig Cox. So he would eventually name Number One, give her a name, which carries on into the TV shows. But it's in this book she doesn't have that name yet, so she's just called Number One throughout. And so she was in charge of the landing party on Cyperia, and I thought that was very interesting. I thought that the way they handled all of that was really well, and her action scenes and her relating with her officers was also very good. I also, on the flip side, really liked everything with Pike in the command center and with Spock down dealing with, like, every of the three main plot lines. Every plot line was interesting, and no plot line felt like it was dragging the other ones down. Sometimes when you're trying to have a multi-protagonist story, one of them is bound to be more boring. That's understandable. That happens with a lot of literature. I don't blame authors when that happens necessarily. But when all three of them are perfectly balanced, it's a delight, and it makes the book stand even higher. And this book, it works for all three characters. And that's the thing that these other books did, was Antares Maelstrom balanced the characters stupendously. I mean, it was amazing how well he balanced them here. He has a much smaller cast. It's just Pike, Spock, and Una, or Number One, that he has to balance here. So it's much easier to do that. And because of that, this feels like a Strange New Worlds novel. This feels like if this was released today, they would have for sure released it under the Strange New Worlds banner, and they may have changed a few things to make it line up with the Strange New Worlds continuity, but I think this would fit really well. The dynamics of the characters worked really well, and it makes me excited to read John Jackson Miller's upcoming book, which, when this releases, the book's probably, I've already read it, but it comes out in February, called The High Country. But this book just showed me that, Pike can carry a book, and so can Una, and so can Spock. And I've read books where Spock, recently I read a new release, Harm's Way, where Spock really carried the book, and I loved this book as well. So Spock can carry a good book. So when all three of them carried it just together perfectly, they blended so perfectly. It's a rare combination. So I really give Greg Cox good marks for that. Finally, I will say that this book has to have good pacing. And there was one point towards about the 2/3 mark where I was like, this has to be the climax. Because how could you make a climax better than this? And it turned out I was just not realizing that the climax lasts for a long time in this book. The climactic action, the climactic big scene is for almost 100 pages. And I thought, that's like a Brandon Sanderson level of like Sanderlanche. No, it's not really a Sanderlanche, it's a really long climax. So it was impressive that he could write a climax that just lasted for so long, and the action kept building and building and building, and the tension was building, and you're just like, oh no, something big has to happen now. So overall, this is a delightful book, and in fact, I would be interested to see if other people of different belief systems came out with a very different feeling about the book because they would disagree with me on the nature versus nurture argument. And I think that Greg Cox very wisely does not answer it. He wisely leaves it kind of up to the audience. He has the characters make decisions in the heat of the moment, in the heat of the battle, but he doesn't have them make actual moral discussions about it. He kind of leaves it up for the reader to decide, and I think that was a really smart idea. So overall, I loved this book. It is a top-tier Star Trek book for me. Cannot wait to read more from Greg Cox. I will for sure look for more books of his. Like, he's solidified himself. He's in my top 5. I don't know where he is in the top 5, but he's in my top 5 Star Trek authors now. So if you've read this book, what did you think? Did you enjoy it as much as me? Are you excited for Strange New Worlds? Are you going to buy the new Strange New Worlds book? Let me know all those thoughts in the comment section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.